You're listening to the Hog Sports Network Daily Podcast. Now, here's your host, Matt Jones.
And happy Tuesday to you. We appreciate you being here with us. Matt Jones with Christina Long in Fayetteville. We got a full show today. We'll talk about Razorback football. The depth chart came out yesterday for the Razorback season opener against UAPB. A little bit later, we're going to talk to Tanner Spearman. He covers UAPB football for the Pine Bluff Commercial. And we'll end the show today with a conversation with Andrew Harris. Andrew is the executive producer of a docuseries that's come out on the ESPN app through SEC Network Plus. It's called Summerball, Cape Cod, and it features a couple of Razorbacks, and it's a great look at summer baseball up at the Cape Cod Baseball League. But we start out today with War Memorial talk again. We kind of went over this yesterday, and I thought we were going to put the War Memorial talk to bed. You know, up until the last day or so, there really hasn't been a whole lot of it. But then Sam Pittman spoke to the media in his game week press conference leading up to this UAPB game. And, Christina, he did not paint a rosy picture of Arkansas's future with War Memorial Stadium. He opened, this was part of his opening comment, he said, quote, "Our team is not looking at this as, well, we have to go play in Little Rock. We're looking at this as an opportunity to take the team on the road." I thought that was kind of interesting. And he continued, "and have a great opening game in the great city of Little Rock." He said, "Whether I want to do that for years to come or not is irrelevant right now for this Thursday night game." Well, that leads to an obvious follow-up. And Tom Murphy of the Democrat Gazette asked it, and he said, what are the long-term thoughts on playing at War Memorial? Pittman responded, he said, "Obviously, we're going to play Arkansas State a year from now over there in Little Rock, but I think there's a lot of conversation that probably needs to be had between now and 2026. None of this is a surprise. There are a lot of variables that are going on right now as it relates to Arkansas and War Memorial Stadium. But to hear the football coach make those kind of comments, whether or not he thought he was making, any type of – I don't know what his mindset was talking about War Memorial. But nevertheless, to hear the Razorback head coach talk about War Memorial Stadium that way, I thought it was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's your classic Sam Pittman honesty,
Yeah,
like he tells you what's on his mind, and he's not trying to be inflammatory. He's not trying to, he's probably frustrated today. If I had to guess, I'd say he's annoyed that everybody's talking about it and dissecting his comments. But hey, I mean, he said it. So
I think he's probably annoyed by the fact that they've got one home football game before October 5th.
Yeah.
And these are all due to circumstances that he really has no control over. I mean, the contract to play Texas A&M and Arlington, number one, that would be a road game this year, so that's a little bit different. But that game is locked in, and so you have to build your schedule around that, including your non-conference games, because it's always locked into that last weekend in September. And then you've got the War Memorial game. I mean, if they're not playing at War Memorial Stadium, this would be a home game. And like it or not, and I've said this many times before, Little Rock is a road game. Not only is it a road game, it is probably their longest road trip of the year because it's about a 3-hour bus ride from War Memorial Stadium back to the U of A campus. You go to Alabama, you go to Nashville, you go to Kentucky, you go to College Station. Wherever you go in the SEC, you go and you get on a plane and you fly back, and those are shorter trips than taking that 3-hour bus ride. It is a factor in this. Some people will, understandably say that it shouldn't be a factor, but it is a factor. It is a road game for the Razorbacks, and I'm sure there's probably a little bit of a frustration that they only play one game at home before the month of October.
Definitely, and it's he's not the first coach to feel this way. I don't know how many have made public comments about it, but he's definitely not the first coach to be like, "Hey, we are playing an extra road game."
Brett Bielema called it a road game.
Yeah. I mean, he is right. You are literally going on the road. They are getting on a bus and driving 3.5 hours. So, I mean, I don't think, like I said, he's not trying to be inflammatory or anything. And I did think it was interesting that was what he started the press conference with. I mean, he knows we're going to ask about it. He knows that's, it's an annual conversation. You mentioned there wasn't a ton of talk about it in the lead up to this year, but like it is an annual, every time they play in Little Rock, the conversation comes up. Should they keep doing this? And next year it'll reach a fever pitch with the last game, the Arkansas State game. And I think it's cool playing in-state teams there. I think it's cool that they'll play Arkansas State there. But yeah, the long-term just feasibility of it is a concern.
Well, there's a conversation to be had about how much interest there is in games against in-state teams because I just don't feel it. I think that some people thought that once this scheduling moratorium was lifted, that there would be more interest. There would be interest in Arkansas playing Arkansas State. There would be interest in Arkansas playing Pine Bluff, and that's not just football. It's in all sports. But really, what we have seen is whether it be baseball or whether it be basketball games, people just don't seem like they're very interested in Arkansas playing these in-state teams. When they play Arkansas State in Little Rock next year in football, that's going to be it's going to be a packed stadium. There's no doubt about it. Arkansas State gets 10,000 tickets, which is more tickets than any other visitor gets. And I don't quite understand why the U of A would have done that when you're in a position of strength in the negotiations. Why do you give more tickets to your to the team who wants the game? But that's another conversation for another day. It just feels to me like with War Memorial, number one, like I said yesterday, the bottom line is the bottom line with War Memorial Stadium. You're leaving millions of dollars on the table by not filling your premium seats, your suites in Fayetteville. We went through this yesterday. It's several $1 million is the difference between a Fayetteville game day revenue and a Little Rock game day revenue. And so, the bottom line is the bottom line as we move into a new generation of college athletics with this house settlement. I mean, you're going to have to come up with somewhere around $25 to $27 million to cover the expenses of everything that is in this settlement.
You've talked a lot about 100-year
getting rid
checks.
of War Memorial
Yeah.
is that to me, that stands out like a sore thumb. Why are we leaving all of these millions of dollars on the table for home football games when that's the most profitable thing you have as an SEC football team? Why are we leaving all these millions of dollars on the table for a home game? And I think that's probably going to be the determining factor down the road.
Right. You've talked about how 100-year check's recent comment to the trustees about needing to find levers to pull to save some money. And this is a lever that the opportunity to pull it is coming. So,
and I heard some people talking this morning about it. How it's political. It's no politician has ever tried. They've never approached this from what we're about to approach it from with this house settlement.
right.
Again, things are changing, and I think so much of the War Memorial debate are 1999 talking points, and you can't use 1999 talking points in a debate about what's going on in 2024. You just can't.
Those are talking points as old as me.
Yeah, I mean it's. Well, you've thrown me off here, but
Sorry.
no, it's all about tradition. It's all about history, and I agree that there is a lot of those are important things in college football, but they can't derail your future. And I think the teams that are going to be successful moving forward are the teams who take a step back and they look at everything and they say, okay, just because we've always done it this way does not mean that we have to do it that way moving forward. And again, like I said yesterday, I've got no dog in the fight at War Memorial. I didn't grow up going to games there. I understand that people who grew up going to games there have a very real emotional connection to it. But because, I didn't, I'm able to kind of look at this, I think, a lot more analytically about what's good for the program. And too many times, I think, in this War Memorial discussion, it gets framed into this Northwest Arkansas versus all y'all type debate where it's the people of Northwest Arkansas just want the people. I don't think that's true. I don't think people mind going down to the games. The problem is that the game day environment, number one, has eroded in Little Rock based on the teams they're playing. They're not going to get the big games back at War Memorial Stadium in the future. And then number two, the financial considerations are so much different than they were when this debate really began about 25 years ago. The revenue, an annual revenue at the U of A for athletics in 1999 was somewhere around $40 million. That's $173 million this year. It's just going to continue to grow. But as it grows, so are the expenses, and so you've got to make the decisions that are right for the program moving forward financially. And again, I just think this is one that's going to have to – it seems like the writing is on the wall. It's just a matter of how long is it going to take before somebody stops to read it.
I'll just be curious who actually tries to take the action, because I do think there is some, nobody wants to be the one to do it, or nobody wants to come out and say that this isn't good because they don't want to hurt. I mean, for lack of a better phrase, hurt anybody's feelings. And to your point about the Northwest Arkansas versus Little Rock thing, it's not the fault of the Central Arkansas fans that this is a problem. It's not like they people think they don't care. I wouldn't be excited as a fan to go, especially we talked about last season's game, Western Carolina. It was super hot. It was a blowout. A lot of people left at halftime. I don't blame them for that. It's not the fault of fans in Central Arkansas that this is a problem.
And it's not their fault that War Memorial, the stadium itself, has fallen into the condition that it's in. And give credit where credit's due, whether it be to the War Memorial Stadium Commission, Arkansas Department of Parks, Tourism, and Heritage. They have done what they can to fix some of the issues there at the stadium, but at some point you have to look at it and say the stadium's almost 80 years old. And Little Rock is not a town that really can command a bright, new, state-of-the-art stadium. And so it puts them in a very interesting dynamic. Look, Little Rock was a huge deal for Razorback football at one point in time. Sam Pittman mentioned that yesterday. There was a time where Fayetteville didn't have lights. Little Rock had lights. There was a time when Northwest Arkansas didn't have population and was very difficult to get to. It wasn't that way in Little Rock. But things have changed. You've got an interstate that has been built. You've got a national airport that has been built nearby. It's not like it used to be whenever these Little Rock games first began. And things evolve. College football evolves. It's not the 1960s. It's not the 1990s. Little Rock was great for the program at one time. So was AstroTurf. You have to move on. You have to evolve. And I think that's kind of what Sam Pittman was saying without really saying it. Yesterday. Let's talk a little bit about the depth chart, Christina. Before we get to the depth chart, one thing that I thought was kind of interesting is that they're not going to name team captains until after the year. They're going to have game captains, and then at the end of the year, they're going to name team captains. That's something a little bit different. I think Georgia did this. I think that's where Sam Pittman got this idea.
Mm-hmm. He mentioned that they used to name them basically at the end of the year. I don't know how many they would name, but when he was speaking, he was saying something about, maybe at the end of the year, we have like a couple dozen captains. Like we kind of award them that honor after the fact as like, hey, this was a person who really led for this program. I think it's an interesting idea. He also said, they might name captains partway through the year. He was like, I don't know. I mean, he basically wasn't setting like a deadline or a timeline on it. He also mentioned that, captains aren't what they were years ago. Like captains aren't, besides the coin toss, they're not getting asked about things. I mean, and the coin toss is, you decide what your strategy is before you go. So captains aren't necessarily, in game. It's not a huge, it's not any sort of deciding factor. So it's more of an honor, and it's more of something that he wants to look back on who proved themselves in games rather than, especially because they have a lot of new players, and that was something he mentioned with the portal. They want to see, who on a Saturday is actually taking on that kind of captain persona.
It's still a big deal, like in terms of like archival purposes.
Totally, yeah.
When you look back 20 years after you played, you want to be able to say you were the captain. I read Kirk Herbstreit's book about a year ago, and he talks about whenever he was the quarterback at Ohio State, he was named captain, and his father had actually been a captain too at Ohio State whenever he played for the Buckeyes. And I think they were one of only like 3 father-son tandems who had been captains there. But at Ohio State, the captains get these captain coffee mugs, and it's a huge deal to get your captain's mug. And so, it's a big deal to be a captain of any team. And so, from an archival standpoint, this is a big deal. Hey, we want to tell you real quick about Hogs Illustrated. You can stay on top of all of the Razorback sports with a subscription to our Hogs Illustrated app. It gives you complete access to all of our website content at wholehogsports.com. Monthly subscriptions begin at $17. You can join now at hogsillustrated.com/subscribe, or you can call 479-684-5509 to get subscribed to Hogs Illustrated. We mentioned this a lot of times that we've got a basketball preview that we're working on. If you get subscribed right now, you'll be subscribed and getting your magazines in time before our basketball preview comes out here in a few weeks. Talking about the depth chart, there were some oars on the first team. One of them is at left guard, where you've got Patrick Kudus or Emarian Harris, but the expectation is that Harris is going to start this game on Thursday, and that Patrick Kudus probably is not going to play as he still continues to battle this back injury. I thought something that Sam Pittman said was interesting was that Emarian Harris, he said he's not the 5th best offensive lineman among the starters. Really was hoping somebody would ask, well, who is the 5th best?
Yeah.
But the point is that they like how Harris has evolved, how he's grown as a lineman, and this is not just a plug and play thing with him. they think that he's a capable player at that position.
Yeah, they feel strongly about him. They have told us throughout that he had a great camp, that he's really come on strong. And I think he said yesterday he doesn't expect any drop-off between Kudus and Harris. And we don't know. He said Kudus will have an MRI. He'll get those readings back Friday, and they'll know a little bit more about his long-term status. So we should be able to ask about that next week. So they expected for a while that it wouldn't be a long-term injury. I think sometimes with back injuries you don't really know, and it can change because usually that tends to be some kind of a chronic issue. So we'll see what happens, and it'll be definitely something to watch with Harris. And they've got him, also listed as second-team left tackle. So they've got a lot of guys that they feel like they can switch in and around. So they feel comfortable with Harris, and they've definitely, with Kudus being out in a lot of the preseason, they've gotten a lot of opportunity to practice with different guys in different spots.
Andrew Armstrong is listed as a starting receiver. No surprise there, but he's questionable for the game with a hamstring injury, and look who's behind him. It's Monte Harris, the 29-year-old freshman. So if Armstrong can't go, I guess Harrison would get the start in this game. It's kind of interesting. I think there's been a little bit of an effort to kind of downplay his story with the Razorbacks just because they don't want to put too much, I don't know if pressure is the right word, but they just don't want to put too much emphasis on a player who hasn't done anything on the field. But now, lo and behold, he may get a start in game one.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I'll be interested what happens there. Armstrong has dealt with a hamstring off and on throughout preseason. He's kind of been in and out of practice. They basically said he's been practicing, but not necessarily full go in practice for the last few days. So it might be the case where they're like, let's save him for the Oklahoma State game, not risk anything. And it'll be really interesting to see what Monte Harrison can do. I would expect him to play even if Armstrong starts. We'll see him, and it'll be fun to see him in action for sure.
Yeah, I think he's definitely going to get some playing time. At running back, first-team running back listed as an or between Jaquindon Jackson and Rashad Dubinion. Jackson has missed some practice time this preseason with an ankle. We think that he's okay and ready to play now. Dubinion, Pittman said, has been slow the last 10 days.
Yeah, it was interesting. We were, if anyone was going to be a question health-wise at running back, we were thinking it was Jaquindon Jackson, and then he came out and said that Rashad Dubinion has been a little bit banged up. So we don't know what the specifics are there. It sounds like just over the last 10 days, he's kind of just not had a full practice, and they want to make sure they're giving guys full practice sessions. And again, they don't want to risk anything in this first game. So he did say Jaquindon Jackson will go out there first, and then he said Rodney Hill will be that number 2.
At defensive end, another or between Nico Davier and Anton Junkaj. The all pronunciation deal. You got to look up the pronunciation of both of those players. They think both of these guys are going to play pretty well for them. This isn't a matter of trying to find the best player. It's a matter of they've got 2 players who they feel like can do something.
Right, which is a great spot to be in, especially on this defensive line. You've got Landon Jackson. He's your kind of steady guy over there, and then having these 2 guys that can kind of rotate will be important for them, especially because defensive tackle remains kind of a question mark as far as depth goes. So I think having those 2 guys able to rotate, I'll be excited to watch Junkaj play. I mean, we've heard a lot about him. We've heard a lot of praise for him. He missed a little bit of time in preseason, I think in concussion protocol, so he's been fine for the last couple weeks. So I'll be excited to watch him play just because I think there's a lot of potential for him.
A rare triple or at cornerback where you've got Marquise Robinson, Jaheim Singletary, and Keon Stewart. Pittman said they've been dealing with some injuries at that position. Yeah,
that's another little just kind of switching around. All those guys have kind of repped at with different teams in preseason, first, second, third. So who they run out there, I won't read a ton into that. But, yeah, it's kind of a depth concern.
Another or at safety between Hudson Clark and TJ Metcalf. We expect both of those players to play. But talking about running out there, we don't know who they're going to run out there first at kicker. I was really surprised to see the or between Matt Shipley and Kyle Ramsey at kicker. Of course, Ramsey's been dealing a little bit with some injuries. Shipley, he's got the credentials coming in from Hawaii. Was a 2-time Groza Award semifinalist there. That's going to be one of the things, I guess, that's going to be kind of interesting on Thursday night is, hey, it's time to kick a 30-yard field goal. You score a touchdown. It's time to kick the PAT. Who's running out on the field?
Right, yeah. I mean, it was funny. We've been talking about it. Before fall camp started, Pittman had said he wanted to have the kicker situation resolved about 2.5 weeks in. And then about 2.5 weeks in, we asked if he was ready, to name Shipley because we had just heard that Kyle Ramsey had missed, I think he had gone 0 for 4 in a scrimmage.
And Shipley had a good day in a scrimmage.
Right, and he told us, Ramsey was dealing with an injury. We decided to kick him. It didn't go well because he was hurt. And we kind of, I think Bob Holt asked, like, are you ready to name Matthew Shipley your kicker? And he said, no, not time yet. 8 no's, I counted them.
Yeah.
So he was not ready to do that, which is fine. He also said yesterday, we haven't talked to the kickers themselves yet about who's going to go out there first and who it's going to be. So he obviously wasn't going to, break that news to them through us. So that's a conversation that'll be ongoing for them. I mean, these are 2 guys that put up monster numbers at their previous schools, Ramsey at Abilene Christian and Shipley at Hawaii, and then both have had some struggles, and we don't know, what they said. Ramsey has a groin injury. We don't know the extent. He said he's been back a little bit recently, so it's kind of going to be a balancing act there, I think.
It'll be interesting to see who the Razorbacks run out there at kicker. When you're playing a team like UAPB, you kind of have to. It feels like the depth chart notes are a little bit more interesting because it's those little things that maybe you want a little bit closer in a game that's not expected to be very competitive. Christina Long, editor of Hogs Illustrated, appreciate you being here. When we come back, we're going to talk to Tanner Spearman. He's the UAPB beat reporter for the Pine Bluff Commercial. We'll have a conversation with him about the Golden Lions, but first a word from our sponsors.
LPGA Week in Northwest Arkansas returns September 23rd through the 29th for the 18th consecutive year. Watch former Razorbacks and 2024 Olympians Maria Fassi and Gabby Lopez compete against the world's best female golfers at the Walmart Northwest Arkansas Championship, presented by P&G at Pinnacle Country Club in Rogers. The NWA Championship is so much more than a golf tournament, with something for everyone to enjoy and activities for fans of all ages. Daily tickets are only $10, and kids 17 and under get in free with a ticketed adult. Get your tickets today at NWAChampionship.com. At Kindle King, we're proud of over 4 decades of design. We're continuing the legacy of great creative design by combining our brands of Kindle King, Soapbox, and Shopcart. Together, these brands represent a new focus in marketing design, with individual attention to specific areas. Through our design expertise supported by a team of talented professionals, we showcase our best. We are Kindle King, we are Soapbox, we are Shopcart, we are design.
And welcome back. We want to tell you about the Hogs Illustrated Sports Club. We've got several speakers coming up during the month of September. On September 4th, Kevin Trainer, a longtime administrator with the University of Arkansas, will be there. Kevin's also the president of what used to be called COSIDA. It's an organization of communications professionals. He'll be our next speaker on September 4th at noon. Other speakers in September include Brandon Marcello of 24/7 Sports, Jordan Weber, the gymnastics coach for the U of A. She'll be on September 18th. Brandon Marcello will be on September 11th. And then we'll end the month with Hunter Urachek, the athletic director for the Razorbacks. All of these luncheons are at Home 2 Suites in Springdale. You can reserve your seats now for any of them at ozarkstix.com. That's OZARKSTIX.com. Tanner Spearman is the reporter, the beat reporter for UAPB for the Pine Bluff Commercial newspaper down in South Arkansas. You can read his work at pbcommercial.com. Tanner, we appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Hey, so let's just kind of talk about this UAPB game. From the standpoint of this game against Arkansas, what's it mean to UAPB playing the Razorbacks and playing at War Memorial Stadium?
Well, I think first and foremost, it's an easy game for the fans. I mean, last year they went to Tulsa week 1. I think they go to Texas Tech next year. And, Tulsa's not that far, but on a weeknight, school night, it's hard for people to get up there. So playing in Little Rock, you've got a lot of UAPB alumni in Little Rock. Pine Bluff is only about 45 minutes away. So it's a really easy game for the fans to make it to. The band can make it. It's just, I think it's, and I always like in-state matchups personally. I think they're always more exciting. I think the fans are more interested in playing Arkansas than they would be in some other teams. So I just think it's a good matchup that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I forgot the band would be there. Are they playing on the field? Do you know?
From what I hear.
Okay.
I've heard conflicting reports, but the last one I heard said that they are playing, but we'll see.
Well, when Arkansas and UAPB played down at War Memorial in 2021, the Pine Bluff band, they stole the show. I mean, that was what everybody was talking about after the game. There really wasn't a whole lot to talk about on the field. But those guys put on a great show, so that's another feather in the cap for the game on Thursday night. A reason for people to make their way out to War Memorial. Just in terms, because these games mean so much to FCS programs, the game guarantee in terms of funding their athletic department. for that year. Do you know what Arkansas is giving Pine Bluff for this game? And if so, how much does that go toward, helping Pine Bluff, get through this year from a financial perspective?
I don't have the numbers in front of me, but this is when you're in the SWAC, when you're in the FCS, the funding and the resources are always far behind what's an SEC program is going to have. So those paychecks are kind of a drop in the hat for the SEC team, but for the SWAC team, it's a big boost. And I mean, you look at this program, even compared to the SWAC, it tends to be a little bit on the low end of funding. So every dollar helps, and whether that's donors, whether that's a game like this where they get a nice paycheck to play somebody, wherever you can find that money, it's really always going to help fund the programs, and whether it's football or the other sports, just every dollar helps.
Do you think it means something that Arkansas schedules UAPB and does not schedule other SWAC teams for football games? Now, I know they got Alabama A&M coming in next year. That's a little bit of a different story because it was a last-second deal. But they're not necessarily funding the rivals more so than they're funding the team that's within their own university system.
That's interesting. I hadn't really, considered that. I mean, UAPB is the only SWAC school in Arkansas, so you could go down to Louisiana or Texas and grab one, or to Mississippi, but you'd have to ask them what their philosophy on who they schedule FCS wise is. But if that is the case, I'm sure UAPB wouldn't mind that.
UAPB is in their second year under Alonzo Hampton. They went 2-9 last season, so obviously it's a new coach from the last time that these teams played 3 years ago. I wonder, just from your perspective, how's he changed the program, and how much, if at all, does Pine Bluff look different than the last time these teams played?
Well, I mean, this team looks different from last year. I mean, he's brought in a ton of transfers, a ton of freshmen. Last year he didn't, based on when he got hired, the timing, he didn't really have time to do a lot of recruiting. So, but this year he's signed a big freshman class and brought in a bunch of transfers, like 50 some odd new people. So there's just a lot of new faces on the team, even from compared to last year. There's probably very, very few that were around the last time these two teams played. So, he's just trying to build a new excitement around this program, trying to turn this program into a more consistent winner than it has been. And this is year 2, so there's still a lot of work to be done. But I think there's a belief that they're moving in the right direction, and we'll see if that's the case this year.
UAPB has named Mekhi Hagans the starting quarterback for this game. Redshirt junior from St. Louis, transferred in from Cisco Community College last year, I believe. Why is he the starting quarterback for this game, and what are his characteristics?
Well, Hagans is a dual threat guy. He made a lot of plays with his feet last year. He can throw the ball as well. I think his physical talents have always been there. And I think talking to Hampton over the past several months, I think he's always wanted Hagans to win this job. He saw it in him that he could be something special. I think the questions were maybe more about his decision-making and things like that. But I think from what I've heard, he put in a lot of work over the summer, staying late with receivers to put in the extra reps. And, the first scrimmage they had this fall, he looked really good, had like 4 touchdown passes. I think he ran for 1 as well. So he's looked way better in the fall than he did even as recently as the spring. So, and last year, I mean, he started the season opener and then he got hurt. And Hampton yesterday was saying that he had planned for Higgins to be the guy last year, but that injury kind of derailed it. So, which was something he had not admitted before. So I think he's always wanted Higgins to be the quarterback. And I think apparently he's finally shown Hampton what Hampton needed to see to put his trust in him.
Who are some of the other players to watch on the Pine Bluff roster?
Well, with so many new guys, it's hard to know sometimes. But on the offensive side of the ball, Jonas Davis is one of the 2 guys listed at starting running back. He had a really good game week 2 last year. I think he was like FCS National Player of the Week after his performance against Tennessee State. But then he got hurt, and the injuries kind of lingered throughout the season. So if you look at his total numbers for the season, they don't look great. But if he's healthy and does what he did against Tennessee State for an entire season, he's going to be a real big weapon for him. At receiver, again, 4 transfer receivers listed at starters. So, it's hard to know until you get them out there. But I know the 2 guys from Arkansas, Monticello, Javon Gibson and Christian Gamage, have both been looking good in fall. Those are guys that Hampton and the coaching staff have been high on. Defensively, Anas Lukman is kind of like Jonas Davis. He's a defensive end that got hurt after week 2, looked really good early, didn't get to see what he could do for a full season. So I know they're excited to have him. Khalil Arnold on the other defensive end position is another guy who can get after the quarterback, led the team in sacks last year. So those are some guys that I think are really going to stand out. One other guy I'll mention is a JUCO transfer, Kalen Bradley at middle linebacker, who had really good numbers at a 10-1 JUCO in California last year. So when you have good numbers and you're on a winning team, that tells me something about what you can do for this team. So there's a lot of guys out there, and I think part of this first couple of games is going to be figuring out for sure who those guys are. But I think those are some guys that you can look for.
We're talking to Tanner Spearman from the Pine Bluff Commercial about Thursday night's game between the Razorbacks and UAPB down at War Memorial Stadium. Tanner, Arkansas is a 48.5-point favorite, and I think everybody would be shocked if this is a real competitive game. Do you think that's too big of a line? How competitive do you think Pine Bluff can be?
I always think when you see a line that big, even if the game is as lopsided as it's predicted, I always think that it's going to be hard to cover because they pull the starters or whatever in the second half. But one thing I'll say about UAPB is even last year against their FBS opponent Tulsa, which obviously it's not an SEC team, I get that, but they went out and led 7-0 after the first quarter. Now it fell apart after that because it's an FBS team and you're far underfunded and don't have the same roster size and all those things. But they started well, so it wouldn't shock me too much if they have a good start to the game. But the question is going to be, can they keep that up for 60 minutes, or is it going to be a quick flash in the pan and that's it? So, competitively, again, we'll see. I know with a lot of new guys, everyone's telling me that they've gelled really well and the chemistry's good, but when you actually get them out there at a game, that's when you truly find out. So we'll see if they're ready to go week 1 against an SEC team.
You mentioned Giovanni Gibson a minute ago. He made some comments over the weekend that perked some ears up here about Arkansas secondary. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I knew when he said it that people were going to hear about it. I think, maybe he should or should not have said that out loud. But at the same time, if you're David going up against Goliath, like remember how that story went. The reason David had to fight Goliath is because as a child is because all the adult soldiers were too scared of Goliath. David was the one who wasn't scared. So, you can feel how you want to about what he said, but if you go into this matchup talking about how big and strong Goliath is, you've already lost the game. You've got to have that mindset of, we can beat these guys. We will beat these guys. And maybe he's right, maybe he's wrong. But at the end of the day, you want these players to go in confident in their own abilities, their teammates' abilities. And I think that's what he showed. So, if I was his coach, I wouldn't love that he said it. But at the same time, I would rather have him than somebody who doesn't say anything but is secretly scared to play an SEC team. So I think it's the right mindset to have at the end of the day.
Well, we said yesterday, it's up to Arkansas's players to prove that he's wrong. For all we know, he may be right. We don't think he's right, but maybe he is. So it'll be kind of interesting just to watch that dynamic during the game Thursday night. A couple more before we get you out of here, Tanner. UAPB, they're picked 5th in their division in the SWAC. You think they can finish higher than that?
We'll see. I think 5th that's where I would have put him personally. Okay. But again, with so many new guys, like I've said this, I feel like I'm beating a dead horse here, but it's just hard to really know. But it felt like the gap between the top 4 in the West and the bottom 2 last year was kind of big. So, it'll be difficult to jump up into that top 4. I wouldn't say impossible. Now you do get 3 of those teams on the road, so that's not going to make it any easier. The one game I'm looking at, Prairie View at home on a Friday night, late kickoff. Maybe those kind of things favor the home team. But I think the West is going to be a very competitive division as it was last year. And all it takes is one upset here or there to kind of get yourself into that conversation and move up in the standings. But, they finished 6th last year, so even 5th would be a step in the right direction. And I think they will take a step forward this year. It's just a matter of how big of a step they end up taking.
Tanner, you went to college at Oklahoma State. Arkansas goes over to Stillwater next week to take on the Cowboys. We've been there for basketball game days. We've been there for baseball game days. First time Arkansas has been over there, though, for football since the 1970s. Just kind of tell us what's a football game day like in Stillwater.
Well, the message I always got in Stillwater was that the town's population doubled or tripled on game days for football. I mean, it truly is. It's a college town. It's kind of off the beaten path a little bit. It's not like it's on an interstate or anything, but it really, they love the Cowboys out there. Streets get closed down to make room for all the festivities. And, it really is a big a big college game day feel when you go to Stillwater, especially when it's a big opponent coming in. So, there's some good places to eat. Eskimo Joe's, of course, got to plug them and their cheese fries. If you haven't had those, give those a shot. But it's a college town. It's going to be a great atmosphere, I'm sure, to have Arkansas come in there. I've always said that that's a matchup that makes a lot of sense to me, being two regional opponents. So I'm sure that the fans will be excited for it. Hopefully they don't. Arkansas gets UAPB to start off, which is an in-state matchup. It's all exciting. Oklahoma State has to start off against the reigning FCS national champs. So I'm wondering how that's going to go. But I think if you go out there to Stillwater, it's a good time.
What's the game day weight at Eskimo Joe's?
Good luck. Good luck.
I kind of figured it might be something like that. Hey, if you can't get into Eskimo Joe's, there's a Mexico Joe's. It's not too bad either.
Yeah.
Tanner.
Mexico Joe's.
Tanner, we appreciate your time and look forward to seeing you Thursday night down in Little Rock.
All right. Thanks for having me. Have a good one, guys.
All right. Tanner Spearman of the Pine Bluff Commercial. When we come back, we'll talk to Andrew Harris. He's the executive producer of the documentary Summerball, Cape Cod. It's a documentary that's airing right now on the ESPN app through SEC Network Plus. We'll talk to Andrew in just a moment. But first, another word from our sponsors.
Taste, sip, sample, and discover the very best restaurants and chefs Northwest Arkansas has to offer at the Bite Experience at the LPGA, a unique culinary experience on site at the Northwest Arkansas Championship. Tickets are available Friday, September 27th through Sunday, September 29th, offering access to the best golf viewing and food and beverage samples from over 30 local restaurants. You don't want to miss this. Tickets are available for $45 a day. Get yours before they sell out at BiteNWA.com. At Kindle King, we're proud of over 4 decades of design. We're continuing the legacy of great creative design by combining our brands of Kindle King, Soapbox, and Shopcart. Together, these brands represent a new focus in marketing design with individual attention to specific areas. Through our design expertise supported by a team of talented professionals, we showcase our best. We are Kindle King, we are Soapbox, we are Shopcart, we are design.
So welcome back in. We appreciate you being with us. I want to tell you about Bentonville Glass. It's committed, professional, and versatile, serving its community since 1971. If you're looking for a quality leader in Northwest Arkansas, if you're looking for skilled craftsmanship, look no further than Bentonville Glass for all your glass market needs with the highest quality products. You can find them in Bentonville at 507 South Main Street or online at bentonvilleglass.com. Andrew Harris is the executive producer of this documentary, Summerball, Cape Cod. You can find it right now on the ESPN app through your SEC Network Plus subscription. Andrew, we appreciate you being on.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Hey, a little known fact is Blake Sutton, our producer, and I, we both have degrees in documentary filmmaking, so we're both kind of nerds when it comes to documentaries. And I found this really interesting. You blend a lot of things that I think are very interesting. College baseball. I love the idea of the Cape Cod League. And I just wonder kind of how did you come about this idea to go up there and feature the Cape Cod League the way you have?
So I played baseball at Vandy from 2009 to 2013, currently do all the SEC Network Plus broadcasts for Vandy. My dad played baseball at Vandy, played in the Jayhawk League in Liberal, Kansas. My brother played baseball at Vandy as well, played in upstate New York, played in the New England Collegiate League, and also played in the Cape Cod League. And then I played out in Kansas. I played in the Hamptons League. I played in the Futures League. So within my family, the Summerball experience is known, but it's a very unique experience to people who don't know about it. And so if you've ever played college baseball and are trying to explain it to somebody, you'll find that people are just super fascinated by that world. I mean, you play with guys that you might be rivals with during that season. You use wood bats, you live with complete strangers who become your close family. And then you get to see some really cool parts of the country. And so thinking about SEC fans, I know that they know that guys play up in the Cape during the summer, but they don't really know what that means or really looks like. And so my goal was just to showcase to fans, what these college players do in between Omaha and fall practice and introduce them to these amazing communities that host these players.
There's 3 episodes to this documentary. Again, it's Summerball Cape Cod. I'm 2 episodes into it so far, Andrew. I'm looking forward to going and watching number 3. One of the things, though, I think you do a really good job of is just painting the picture of, what these games mean like to those communities in Massachusetts.
Oh, for sure. I mean, every summer, I mean, they get an influx of new players, and there's just a lot of energy around each of these ballparks. I mean, there's 10 ballparks all within an hour of each other. I think the Bourne president up there said it's essentially beaches, baseball, and ice cream shops all along these roads, and that's exactly what it is. I mean, it's just this baseball little heaven up there, and the communities come out. I mean, there's 2, 3,000 people that come out to these games, and depending on the place that you are, and it's just a great environment for these kids to spend the summer.
You feature a couple of Razorbacks in this. You talk to Ryder Helfrich, the Razorback catcher, also to Camden Kajal, who's transferring to Arkansas from Vanderbilt. You were telling me earlier that there was plans to have a couple of more Razorbacks, Vahiva Aloy and Ben Bybee, as part of this, but they had already left the league by the time you got there.
Yeah, so we interviewed a number of players at the SEC tournament down in Hoover, just to get a sense for, personalities and, who's going to be going up there, what they might be interested in getting into. For example, like Cam Kojal was very excited about fishing, so we made sure that we were going to schedule some sort of fishing charter for him. I think you'll see that in episode 3. But we interviewed Vahiva Aloy and Ben Bybee as well. But a week before we got up there, they had both left. And that's just kind of the nature of summer ball, especially with pitchers. We tried to feature as many position players as possible, just because we know the pitchers are on some pitch counts. But man, Aloy was having a heck of a season. And I think you had Coach Van Horn on here about a week ago, and he was saying that I think their coach was trying to get him to stay up there because he was on pace to be MVP of the league.
Yeah, he had a great summer. Ryder Helfrich had a great summer. They were two of the best offensive players. Michael Anderson, who's transferring to Arkansas from Rhode Island, he also had a real big summer on the Cape. I want to get back to you about this documentary real quick, but I would be remiss if I did not ask you about Kojal, who's transferring to Arkansas from Vanderbilt, second baseman. What are the Razorback fans going to see out of this kid?
Yeah, Cam's a great kid. First and foremost, he's just a great human. And the week before we were supposed to go up there and film, he entered the portal, and we were thinking, man, I don't know if we're going to be able to film him, because if he might be going outside of the SEC, we couldn't really feature him. And so when he chose Arkansas, I was excited, one, because we could film him, but also because I think he's going to fit in really well there. And I talked with him a little bit about it up there, and I think he's really excited. I mean, he's a great bat. We didn't see him a ton at Vandy in the field because he did a lot of DHing, but they had some injuries towards the end of the year, and he actually did get to play a little bit of second base, and he was great there. And I saw him play this summer, and he looked great as well. So I think you guys are going to have an amazing team coming back this spring.
And I think, it's the SEC, right? I mean, it seems like there's about 10 now, even with Texas coming in, even more teams every year, that you just expect them to be as good, if not better, than they were the year before. You mentioned that you played summer ball, and I would assume that you probably experienced some of this. But as I talk to the players who go off and they play at the Cape Cod League, or they play at the Northwoods, or they go out to California, one of the things that really interests me and intrigues me is what happens off the field. They have to go into these homes, and they're living with host families, and they have to go find their own way to work out for the summer. They're having to buy gym memberships. They're doing their own laundry. Are they washing their own uniforms? You could tell me that if not, but just kind of take me into just kind of how different that life is versus maybe more of the regulated lifestyle that they have when they're on these college campuses.
Yeah, I think in the first episode, Chris Burke, ESPN analyst, we interviewed him, and he put it perfectly. He said, all these SEC programs do such a great job of organizing these players' lives, from meals to workouts to training programs. And Summerball is nothing like that. Like, it's very much sink or swim. So if you want to go work out and get better, it's going to be on you. You've got to find a place to do that. And usually they're not the best places to work out, and they don't have the best machines, and you're trying to move over retirees and people playing tennis, and so it's definitely an adjustment, but that's the fun part of summer ball. It's such a different experience.
And that gets you ready for minor league baseball, because minor league baseball, there's nobody to sit there and hold your hand. It's all about personal accountability and whether or not you're going to take the steps that you need to take to move on to a higher level.
Very much so. Yeah, and it was interesting to talk to some of these players as we're trying to, we want to showcase them on the field, but we also want to showcase them doing stuff off the field, like, fishing or playing golf. And I mean, I'll give Ryder an example. For Helfrich. I mean, sometimes I would reach out to him and ask him if he was going to be doing anything, and a lot of times it was, "Hey, I'm at the gym," or, "Hey, I'm, doing something to better my game." And so, a lot of these guys go up there and are so laser focused on, this is my chance to get better. And so it's wake up, go to the gym, go home, eat, and then go to the field and just continue to grind.
Tell me about these fields that they play on up there. I mean, these look like they're basically kind of high school stadiums that evolve into, I don't even know how you would explain them. You got people kind of sitting everywhere. You got people in lawn chairs, bringing blankets out, sitting up on the grass berms. But these are huge community events when these teams play. I mean, it's not uncommon to see several thousand people at these games in parks that don't hold, they don't have thousands of seats.
Right. And that's the best part about summer ball, is the different personalities of the fields. I mean, you go all the way out to Chatham, Massachusetts, which is on the east side. And I mean, if you watch the movie Summer Catch, that's kind of where that movie took place, back in the 90s, I guess. But yeah, I mean, a ton of people, high school fields, pretty nice surfaces. Like, they are high school fields, but they keep them very nice. But yeah, very much not turf, not your SEC caliber surfaces. So, a couple bad hops here and there. The biggest thing I heard from a lot of the hitters is the backdrops. There might be like a white house in center field that you just have no shot of picking up the ball out of the pitcher's hand. So when you're trying to face, the top arms in the country, not being able to pick up the ball is a little bit difficult.
I've said this earlier, that Cape Cod, this is kind of like on the bucket list for me to go up there and cover a game there, and not even cover games, just go up there and kind of experience the whole baseball vibe there during the summer. You do a good job, I think, of going into the towns. You go into diners, you go into restaurants, in these towns like Bourne and Cotuit and Chatham, and just kind of talking to the locals. How receptive were they to talk to you? I would assume pretty much.
I mean, everybody knows about the league up there. It wasn't like I would reach out and they'd say, I don't know what you're talking about. Every single person said, oh, 100%. Like, this is such a big part of our summer, a big part of our community. And everybody was very receptive to talking about it. And, these players become a part of the community and they get to know them. And it's an amazing place.
One of the things that's interesting to me, I think one of the people that you interviewed said that there's about 80 volunteers per game that it takes to put this thing on.
That's true. Yeah. The amount of interns and volunteers that do everything from merch to taking tickets to grilling burgers and grilling donut burgers, which we feature a little bit.
Did you eat one?
I did not have one. No,
okay.
We actually filmed the last 3 that were cooked that day.
Because they run out quickly, right?
I'm sorry?
They run out quickly, right?
They do. They go quick. Probably 3rd or 4th inning.
We're talking to Andrew Harris, executive producer of Summerball Cape Cod. Co-created this docu-series that you can find on the ESPN app through SEC Network Plus, along with Doug Stanton. Includes interviews with Kyle Peterson, Chris Burke, a couple of notable names. If you're a college baseball fan, Jared Saltalamacchia is in this, Mike Yastrzemski, Tony Kemp, Tim Corbin, the Vanderbilt head coach. Andrew, you did a great job with this. Ryder Helfrich drops a little bit of a scheduling nugget in this. He says that Vanderbilt is coming to Fayetteville in 2025. So tell us about the Commodores and their team next year.
Right. Yeah, I heard when we interviewed Ryder, that was some news to me as well when he dropped some of that news. But yeah, Vandy's going to have a really good good team this year. They've got a couple transfers in. Mike Mancini, who actually played up in the Cape, from James Madison, coming in infielder. And yeah, I mean, I think similar to Arkansas, didn't have the year that they wanted to last year, and just looking to make a dent this year in the season.
You know, Vanderbilt won national championships in 2014 and 2019. And then here comes Tennessee and Tony Vitello, who we're all familiar with here. He was an assistant at Arkansas. I wonder, how has the rise of the volunteer program kind of changed the dynamic of baseball in that state? Because now you got two real big heavy hitter programs.
Yeah, I mean, the mid-state within Tennessee has always been loaded with talent. And it's been very impressive. I mean, all the way from, Nashville to Murfreesboro, and then, up north a little bit as well. And yeah, Tennessee, Coach Vitale has done such a great job over there, in Knoxville, and yeah, definitely is, providing some competition recruiting wise. But yeah, I think it's just great for the game. It's great for Tennessee and like the state of Tennessee, just to have so much great baseball talent within the state.
Are you ever look, like Vitello, he signed a contract extension this week, and I think he's getting paid $3 million per year. I mean, when I started covering SEC football head coaches weren't getting paid half of that, and now you got baseball coaches making $3 million. Tennessee is about to put $100 million into their stadium. Vanderbilt, you're looking at renovating Hawkins Field. You've got renovations happening right now, or they're scheduled to happen at A&M and at Auburn and at OU, who's joining the league. I mean, do you ever just kind of sit back and say, wow, I mean, how much SEC baseball has really changed?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And that was a big reason for me producing the show, is to help continue to grow the game of college baseball. I mean, over the last 2 years, there's been record-breaking viewership for regional supers and the Men's College World Series. And you mentioned, stadiums being revamped. The NIL money is flowing into the baseball world a lot more these days. And, college baseball has definitely got some momentum. And so I think if we can show fans more of these players' daily lives and kind of their personalities, it can only help increase the popularity of the game.
What's the timeline on the Hawkins Field renovation there in Nashville?
I have not heard a definitive date. I know that stuff is moving. I don't know of a final end date, though.
It's kind of a tough deal right now with baseball, or anybody that's dealing with the renovation, just with all the changes that are going on in college baseball. We'll get you out of here on this. I noticed yesterday where Dylan Cruz got called up at LSU, and so now you've got three of the top four players from last year's draft class, Skeens, Cruz, and Wyatt Langford. They've all been called up to the majors. It's the first time in 27 years that three of the top four draft picks have made it to Major League Baseball within the first year. All three of those guys were SEC players, two of them from LSU, one of them from Florida. You look at, Dansby Swanson from Vanderbilt, Andrew Benintendi here at Arkansas, Garrett Crochet, Ben Joyce, and the list just goes on and on, Bregman at LSU. We're seeing over the last 10 years or so really accelerated movement through the minor leagues from some of these high-end SEC baseball players. I just wonder, from your seat, as you watch these games, calling the games on SEC Network Plus, what do you see from a talent level, and how would you compare SEC baseball maybe to high A baseball or double A baseball? Like what would you say SEC baseball is the equivalent to on the professional level?
I mean, I've always thought it's talent wise, kind of a double A level. I think the biggest jump, though, from college to the professional ranks and then minor leagues to MLB is just consistency. I mean, anybody can have a hot streak. I mean, you're facing guys in the SEC as a hitter. I mean, you're facing guys who are throwing 100 miles an hour. It's not any different than you're going to be facing in the major leagues, velocity wise, but it's the ability for pitchers to locate and counts exactly where they want it to be. It's just that consistency from a pitching standpoint, and then offensively, not chasing outside of the zone, and being able to hit those pitches that you actually want. And so it really is just that consistency, but the talent level at a base level is there. And so that's why I think college baseball has such momentum, is people are realizing I can have I can go to a college baseball game and I can see really high level talent, especially in the SEC. And then I'm going to see these guys in the major leagues in, a year or two.
Kyle Parkinson, who is the director of football communications at Arkansas, used to be the director of baseball comms over at Vanderbilt when you played there, Andrew. He wanted me to ask you if you remember your only home run. He said it didn't happen during a game. He said it happened during a scrimmage. You remember it?
It did. Yes, Cal State Fullerton.
Yep, that's
yes.
it. That's
I
it.
do remember that one. Yeah.
Yeah, he said it didn't count. So
it didn't. No.
He wanted to leave it there.
Yeah, thank you, KP. I appreciate you reminding me that it didn't count. Yes, because he was the scorer. So
Andrew Harris, producer of Summerball at Cape Cod. Andrew, we appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you so much.
And we appreciate you all for being here on our podcast today. We'll be back tomorrow as we continue to look forward to Arkansas's season opener against UAPB on Thursday night in Little Rock. Until then, hope you'll visit us on our website at wholehogsports.com. Have a great day, everyone.